Hello, and thank you for joining us for Success Stories for Small Energy Customers. Today, we'll be hearing about small-scale VPPA adjacent procurement mechanisms. Our call speakers today are Jay Creech from REI, Katie Chauroyer at Evergreen, and Michael Leggett, also from Evergreen. So Jay, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Ashley. Great. So my name's Jay Creech. I'm with REI. So we're the National Outdoor Co-op. We have stores in about 181 different locations across 41 states. So national footprint as a retailer. We're certainly big in the retail space, but not the biggest buyer. I'll start with the graph here off to the side just to kind of give a little bit of context. I think that, in the grand scheme of the companies that you hear a lot of times in the news for clean energy, the Microsofts and Amazons and Apples and Googles, huge load. For us, our annual load is about in that 80,000 megawatt hour range. So sizable by a lot of metrics, but not by others. Within that, I'll kind of just break it down into three buckets. So we have our on-site solar. Usually on our own stores, we have about 20 stores and then 2, soon to be 3 distribution centers with on-site solar. You can see that with kind of that reddish orange line. So, like Chris and Jonathan just touched on, when you have the ability, the control of the building, the roof, it can be a great part of that toolkit for us. We've leveraged it. We'll continue to leverage it, but it's not something that we can put on every single store. The middle kind of green bucket there is really kind of where we have our utility kind of tariffs and our kind of green tariff options. So the big one that we oftentimes talk about is Puget Sound Energy, kind of our home base in the Seattle area. Their green direct program, so long-term offtake from a green tariff. So kind of 2 of those buckets that we've kind of checked that Ashby walked through in the beginning. And then in that bottom section, we have a lot of kind of the unbundled or the spot market rec. So something that REI has been a part of for, about 10 years now. And so, as I shift over to kind of the text half of the screen, we've been 100% renewable since 2013. And a lot of what we're trying to do on our journey is think about what it will look like to kind of increase the impact side of it. We know that there's a ton of great conversations within SEBA, within SEBI, to kind of think about what's next, whether that's hourly matching, emissionality, the community impacts, the job training, all those things. We think it's all great. We didn't want to necessarily plant a flag in a super narrow kind of lens. And so the kind of more holistic strategy that we have and the way we think about it is, we want our renewable energy as a national retailer, we want to have some sort of local connection. So like Ashby mentioned in the beginning, there's a scenario where we could just buy from a single project in one part of the country, and it certainly wouldn't check that kind of local box for us. We want to have a little bit of geographic diversity. We want to have an opportunity to kind of explore what kind of the community impact will look like with some of these kind of smaller and medium-sized projects, and where we can continue to work with utilities and take advantage and push them to make compelling offerings, and consider where we can have more on-site solar. And in cases where we can't, think about kind of what these voluntary market transactions will look like. The other half that we're really thinking about is kind of how can we help make renewable energy more accessible? There's no shortage of folks that are interested in procuring impactful RECs, and we think that's great. Some of the most kind of common mechanisms have kind of these really well-established barriers to entry. So obviously, not every utility has the right kind of green tariff offering. So that can't be a one-size-fits-all solution. Putting solar on every single roof, if you are leasing stores, or if the roof age is not appropriate, then you have your barriers there. And so for us, as we think about the VPPA or the PPA, these bigger transactions that for the last 6 or 8 years have really dominated kind of the commercial space. Typically really big volume. Most of those deals will be larger than REI's annual load. You'll see folks signing deals for 300,000 or 400,000 megawatt hours annually. You'll see really long-term contracts and term lengths, so 10, 12, 15, 20 years. And then a lot of complexity, both in negotiating the contract itself, and also kind of the ongoing management as you're dealing with kind of wholesale price exposure and different kind of settlement procedures to make sure that you're getting your recs and you're kind of paying your bills or receiving credits as you should be. So a lot of things that I think for a smaller, medium-sized buyer can be really challenging to say, hey, like one, perhaps the market's just not ready for someone to say, hey, we want to buy 5 or 10,000 megawatt hours a year when they can go out and sell their entire project to a larger buyer. And then two, I think, if there's any kind of staffing limitations, it's really hard to say, okay, great, let's enter into a year-long negotiation, go through really robust legal support, really robust financial modeling, just to get this maybe transaction across the finish line, because these deals are really complicated. They're not 100% success rate. So for us, it's thinking about how can we kind of help overcome and support business models that will mitigate some of those challenges. So the kind of top line, I'd say we're certainly big. We have that national presence, but we encounter a lot of the same barriers within kind of those kind of most common or most traditional procurement vehicles. And we've really kind of coalesced around like, this local element and this accessible element. And on the next slide, I'll kind of walk through a little bit of why we think the evergreen opportunity really kind of aligned with that. And so for us, earlier this spring in the April timeframe, we announced our first transaction with Evergreen. They're a Seattle-based developer, so just kind of in our neighborhood, which is always exciting. And we knew that they had a really compelling pitch as far as kind of like, can you take some of those elements of like a VPPA or virtual power purchase agreement and kind of shrink them down and just make them a little bit more amenable to other types of buyers? And so they have smaller projects. So rather than perhaps a several hundred megawatt size project that might take years and years to get through interconnection and permitting and construction, a lot of those deals you'll see like a COD or like the operation date in the 2026, 2027, 2028 timeframe. Evergreen is working on smaller projects, which oftentimes allows them to kind of accelerate that timeline and also site them a little bit closer to communities, so you have perhaps more of the distribution side connection as opposed to the transmission side. The transaction type itself, shorter, so well under 10 years, smaller, well under 100,000 or 200,000 megawatt hours per year. We're talking about 2,500 megawatt hours per year. And we think that those are kind of key barriers where it's like, the number of companies that are out there with a load in the couple thousand megawatt hours per year is huge. It's thousands and thousands of organizations and companies. And so recognizing that those companies could take advantage of something like this. And then for us, there's a lot of ways that you can kind of throw the additionality lens on. I think there's certainly merits to competing and getting into kind of competitive projects that might have 5 or 6 or 7 off-takers lined up. I think for us in this lens, we said, if we don't help support a project like this, will the project get built or will someone else just kind of swoop in and take it? And I think with some of the bigger, kind of more common procurement methods, that is the case. Like a company X could back out and company Y is right there, ready to take their spot. So for us, being able to support a project like this, a business model like this, kind of checked that like slight pivot on the additionality lens. So we're really excited about kind of this model. We didn't see a ton in the market that was really looking to serve what I'll call like the under 100,000 megawatt hour kind of project size, as well as kind of the shorter term length. And so, we want to move away from some of that big bucket of the spot market or unbundled recs. We want to move into some of these kind of more sophisticated transactions, but with the caveats that we are, by all measures, just kind of a medium-sized buyer. And so how can we kind of work with developers to figure out what will work for REI and hopefully be applicable and relevant to other folks as well. So that's kind of my spiel. Katie, if you want to add anything, please jump in, and Ashby, I'll let you kind of run any Q&A as well.
I'm gonna stop sharing my screen here because we it's helpful to look at each other. If folks that are on the call feel comfortable coming on and joining us on camera, that would be great to have a little bit more of a conversation, but we want to hear from you guys. We just heard very different stories, different motivations, different company sizes, different geographies. So what questions are stirring for y'all?
I did see one in the chat. The Evergreen deal is fixed price. So you could call it either a fixed price VPPA, or you could call it like a forward rec offtake. So we're not dealing with the wholesale settlement prices. We wanted a little bit more of the simplicity there. So it's kind of a variation of a VPPA.
Katie, can you talk at all about how you are approaching the additionality portion of a procurement like this, or what projects you're looking at, and what interest you've seen from buyers?
Sure, absolutely. And so I think Jay, you teed it up really well, which is what we've been hearing from customers is there's a desire for making sure that they are investing in a project that is getting new solar online or new wind online. And what we really have noticed is there's a gap in the market today, particularly for smaller and medium buyers. And so what we have really heard is this desire of, how do I know that what I'm doing is making a real difference? And so the way we think about it here at Evergreen is we need to build something on the order of like 60 gigawatts of new solar. Right now, we're getting about 20 done on a year-over-year basis, according to DOE estimates. And so we are really looking to try to create this marketplace. So projects that might be more in the smaller mid-market size, have an opportunity to be connected with buyers like yourself, folks who are interested in making a long-term commitment. And by long-term, we're talking 5 years, 10 years, where you're bringing a meaningful revenue stream to the project that's helping it to go forward. And I think, Jay, as you said it, it's these smaller projects, shorter term, and also things that are more local in many cases. And speaking to that portfolio approach, Ashby, that you had spoken to.
And it looks like you're off mute. Did you have something to ask?
Yeah, hi, Katie. This is Tin Fong from Stack Infrastructure. Yeah, great to hear about your project with REI, kind of smaller scale. We're also in the Texas market, and we're looking for like a shorter term transaction, like what you described. Can you elaborate a little bit more? Is this kind of like a retail renewables? Are you like also the energy service provider here, or?
Great question, Tim. So what we're doing is we're actually working with developers in the Texas market who are looking to get new projects built. And in particular, what Jay was referring to is we're looking at what we call them like the Texas 10s, if you will. So projects that are under 10 megawatt in size, because they will connect directly to distribution level as opposed to at the transmission level. And so, in theory, that should be helping things to be moving along much more quickly. If I can reference the earlier part of the call, I think we have found similar to, some of Jonathan's comments, like, there are still some opportunities with utilities and interconnection to get that to move more quickly. But this is an opportunity to try and make things move a bit faster.
Yeah, and just sorry, this is Michael Legg, and I'm going to jump in, but we're not selling energy. So these are long-term contracts on RECs to help bring revenue to our projects and have a material impact in making projects financeable, viable, and happen. So it is outside of your relationship with your utility and how you actually get energy.
Okay, no, actually, I like the kind of like a separate approach, where I don't have to tie things together. So it's kind of like a longer term REC purchase transaction then?
Yeah, so
okay.
So Jay had just been describing it as like a fixed price VPPA. That's the way some folks think of it. We've also had people refer to it more as like a REC purchase agreement. So you're getting sort of the benefits of that VPPA style, where that long-term commitment, but you're not taking on the energy market price risk with what you're doing. You're still getting your electrons through your utility provider.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I like that aspect because the issue I have with the VPPA is that monthly fluctuation. You know, smaller, medium-sized companies may not be able to take that volatility, you know, like a large company. Thank you.
All right, I am challenging myself not to be uncomfortable with silence. So anyone else have thoughts?
Is the REI, the Evergreen, is that program only available in Texas?
No, we are working nationwide.
And just to throw out another hook on this, I think it's great REI is doing and building, you know, locally near, you know, where the stores where they're using power. Another angle on this is let's build, you know, I think RECs allow you to procure anywhere in the country to address your scope 2 emissions in the country or in Canada. And so we love building where the grid is dirtiest or where it is hardest to build renewables. We think that there's an opportunity to have maximum impact. So we actually do a lot to quantify the avoided emissions based on marginal emissions. So this is kind of the whole shtick around emissionality. So where is the grid dirtiest? Where's the impact greatest? And so we do a lot to kind of dig into that and bring transparency to that for our customers.
So let me clarify. I know you've said this, but I'm getting it through my head. This is not building a new development. This is just buying into existing developments so you can get the RECs. Sorry.
Yeah, no, so it actually is new project development.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
the real question that Michael was, who's one of our co-founders here at
Yeah.
Evergreen was mentioning is it's thinking about where you site the projects. And I think what we're also trying to very respectfully reflect is all of you have different priorities for how you may think about where you want projects, you know, and, you know, REI has like a strong focus right now on going local, which is awesome, you know, on that. We've had other customers who may not have, you know, as distributed load, but are really trying to think about maximum impact. So in that end, looking at the emissionality of the project and
Yeah.
saying, putting it in that dirtiest spot may have the biggest impact may also be a factor.
And sometimes there's a line, Texas's grid is dirty and the government there is not super pro renewables, in case anybody's noticed.
Thank you.